gather under the shadow of a profound and painful history. All those years ago, the streets of Lhasa surged with a courage that the world has never forgotten, even if it has often failed to match it. March the 10th is not just a date on a calendar, it is the heartbeat of a nation that refuses to stop beating. We remember the thousands who stood before the Nobulinga, shielding the Dalai Lama, and the generations since who have carried the flame of Tibet in their hearts while living under the flame of an iron curtain. But as we honor that courage, we must also confront a difficult truth. For decades, the international community has been far too inert. While Tibetans were being subjected to re-education, while their monasteries were being turned into museums, and while their children were being funneled into colonial boarding schools to strip them of their language and identity, much of the world chose the path of least resistance. We've watched as economic interests were allowed to silence moral obligations. We've seen diplomatic concerns expressed in hushed tones, while the cultural erasure of the Tibetan people proceeded in broad daylight. This global inertia has not been a neutral act. It has been a green light to those who seek to erase a civilization. However, the landscape is shifting. We are moving past the era of mere statements of concern into an era of legislative accountability. I want to highlight the vital work of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, for which I'm the executive director. IPAC is coming to represent a historic shift in how the world's democracies face the challenges posed by the People's Republic of China under Xi Jinping. These lawmakers within IPAC have moved the needle from passive observation to active defense. Recently, IPAC's coordinated efforts have been instrumental in bringing the issue of forced labor and mass collection of DNA in Tibet to the forefront in national parliaments around the world. By bridging the gap between lawmakers in now 45 democratic parliaments, IPAC is working to ensure that Tibet is no longer a side issue. In Brussels last year, during our summit, lawmakers negotiated and agreed a model resolution on Tibet. This has now started to pass in IPAC parliaments, and I've got some good news for you. This morning, a few hours ago, the Australian Senate and the House both passed unanimously a resolution based on the Brussels summit motion that we negotiated and agreed last year. So it's starting to move now, and it just passed in Australia. So I think that IPAC's work proves that when we stop acting as isolated nations and start acting as a unified front for democratic human rights, the inertia can break. But we can't do this alone. The world has to recognize that Tibet is not a historical relic, and it's not a complicated territorial dispute. It is a contemporary crisis of self-determination. So here's what we have to demand. We have to demand an end to the colonial boarding school system that separates at least 1 million Tibetan children from their heritage. We need targeted sanctions against officials responsible for religious persecution and for the surveillance state. And critically, especially now, we need a formal rejection from democratic governments of any interference by the PRC in the succession of the Dalai Lama. To the people of Tibet, including many of you here, who continue to resist with a dignity that shames the world's silence. We see you. To the activists and lawmakers of IPAC, thank you for turning the tide. We have a lot of work to do, and we assure you today, we make a commitment to keep going. The era of looking away is over. Today, we do more than remember the uprising. We have to commit to an uprising of conscience in every capital of the world. Thank you.